and welcome to Agenda from Bengaluru. Now, Bengaluru is certainly considered India's startup city. So what better place really to talk about the health of the startup scenario in India? What is going right? Is anything going wrong? What can change? Joining us, representatives from NASSCOM and also people from young startups from across the country. Sangeeta Gupta of NASSCOM, Senior Vice President, I'll come to you first. How would you describe the state of the startup industry in India now? It's been such a rosy image that has been presented over the years. Are there still roses or are things beginning to dim a little bit now?
So I think there are roses with thorns. I wouldn't say that it's all a bed of roses and everything's bright out there. There's some very, very interesting startups coming up. There's interesting new technology-focused things happening. But there are lots of issues that startups are dealing with, whether it's around funding, whether it's around maturity, whether it's access to market. And I think all of those things are part of the evolution curve, but I think we're getting there slowly and steadily, not at the leap jump we should be.
Not at the space at which you should be, because funding. She mentioned funding. Now, Ravi Gururaj of NASSCOM also. 50% and over 50% drop when it comes to seed funding. People are not investing as much as they should perhaps in brand new startups. What's going wrong?
So I think, we've been benchmarking what's happening across our ecosystem over the last 5 years, and this year we've noticed that in the very earliest stage, we've had a little bit of a dampener, right, in terms of the quantity and the quantity and the quality even of the deals that have gone in. I think first and foremost, there's an organic shift across the whole world. A little bit less funding has happened across everywhere. So
not India specific.
There's one element of it that is not India specific. The other is, I think, in India we haven't seen as many exits, for instance. We have had, a little bit of dampening in even later stages, and that has seeped down into the early stage, right? Okay. I think more important, there are some structural impediments as well. We've got this angel tax issue that needs to get fixed, which today a lot of the young startups that have taken a little bit of VC funding or angel funding have started receiving notices from IT departments saying, come and explain to us the valuation. And oftentimes the startup has actually burnt through the money. They're literally on, kind of walking dead, and still they're having to go to the IT department to go explain, what the valuation was and even maybe cough up tax on the initial funding they got. That's a huge roadblock, and we should fix some of those things, right?
Is the government ready to fix it? You've approached them, I'm sure you're still working.
Yeah, we're working with them. It's an issue we've raised over the last 2 years. I think there are solutions to be had. But we need to bring everybody together on that, right? So that's still a pending to do for sure. And I think if we release that, if we get that going, it'll kind of help release that roadblock. I think there are other things as well structurally we can do, but I don't want to say this is all doom and gloom at all, okay? I think there's lots of corporates that have entered the ecosystem. We've had more corporate accelerators set up in the last 12 months than ever before, and a lot of them are looking to write those early stage seeds checks. I think we have to be proactive about our policies there as well to help those companies write early checks without a lot of regulatory hurdles.
Those hurdles are still there. Raj Nerawati, you've been trying to get funding for your startup as well.
Yes.
How easy has that been to get funding, seed funding?
3 challenges. First is, when you raise money in India, it is treated as an income.
As taxed.
Right.
You're taxed. And that you really need to... Yes.
That's huge. Yeah. Second, I don't want to lose money as an early, like let's say I get money. Yeah. If the person is not a director in my company, then I have to give shares. Now what does that do? It dilutes my company too quick, too early on when there is no valuation. In US and the Western countries, what we do is we use a convertible note, and you do a convertible debenture with a future valuation. Now, I was forced to actually set up a company in US only because when I raised money, I didn't want to dilute the company. So I took all this money in the US, and then I gave everybody a convertible debenture with a 15% discount on Series A.
To negotiate the rules of India.
Absolutely, because there's no other way I can do it. And then the third thing that hurts you the most is there are a lot of incentives that are told about startup policy India, and you get benefits. I would like to know who all I've got, because I qualify for a checklist of Make in India, I qualify for social impact, safety, I qualify for like hardware. Nobody's giving me a straight answer how I can get the benefits.
You're not getting the benefits that are supposed to be there. Aditya Avasthi of Imbibe, you're a new young startup. Does it resonate for you also in terms of funding, in terms of perhaps rules and regulations which are not so startup friendly?
So, we've been lucky. We've raised about $12 million and we've stayed the course in true innovation. And I think at some level, it's also about startup founders managing their board and their narrative really well to keep them close to what they're building and why they're building it. And I think once the innovation comes through, so our stated goal was, can artificial intelligence improve student outcomes through technology, thereby supplementing teacher quality through AI? So 4 years later, we have the solution, and what we're seeing is insane. We're seeing the government step back and prepare room to accept the solution without onerous procurement cycles. And we're also seeing a lot of funding interest, not just from India, but from global tech companies saying, how did this IP get built in India? Isn't India only for acqui-hiring? You can't actually build real IP. Is this real IP? So I think that's very exciting. And I think that, at the end of the day, if you're in Washington, you can't not like politics, right? So India is India. What's great is great. What's hard is hard. And as a startup founder, you've got to be a startup founder.
You have to be a startup founder. Now, Ravi Gururaj, you had mentioned also about how corporates, how big players are actually getting involved to encourage other startups. Now, Shiva Chinnaswamy of Tesco Technology, how are you going to be helping Indian startups?
We are already helping startups in UK and in Israel, and we actively look forward to partnering with startups in India, and we are looking at startups that are in the retail space, search and discovery, in supply chain, in store technologies. So one good thing I have been seeing in the last few years in the Indian startup ecosystem is there are a lot of new startups that are focused on enterprise applications. Previously, they were all focused on customer. Still, there is a lot of scope there, but this aspect was, it wasn't viewed cool. So now we are seeing like a lot of very good startups in that space, and we look to interact with them and evaluate and hopefully partner with a few of them. Yes.
Now, Darren Gibbs, also of Tesco, do the rules and regulations of India frighten you, because they frighten Indians as well? Do you feel that this is India a place where there is ease of doing business, as we like to say?
So I don't see the rules frightening us in taking on with working with startups and actually encouraging the innovation. I see that actually it's about finding the right innovation and working collaboratively with them. I think there's some great opportunity about how we can ensure that we are customer focused in what we deliver, so we can help the startups actually deliver to customer need and get to the market quickly. And actually, it being an India startup is not an issue at all, and the government regulations does not get in the way of it.
It does not get in the way of that. Now, Nikhil Joyce, Eventusaur, as a startup founder, was there ease of doing business, or was it not quite the smooth road you had hoped?
It has been hard in the sense that there are regulations, there's GST that's come in, there's a bunch of stuff. As founders, we are kind of married to our products and our companies. We're really good at a couple of things that we're good at, which is why we find co-founders who have complementary skill sets. But then there's doing taxes, there's accounting stuff, there's legalities, all of these things that you need to take care of. I think there's a way for the startup policy to get a little simpler, to make it a little easier to follow. At Karnataka, we've kind of been fortunate that we have Mr. Priyank Kharge at the helm of affairs. As a very young IT/BT minister, he's super approachable. There's change, like everybody else on the panel said. I think the pace needs to be upped a little bit, but apart from that, I think I'm very hopeful about how things are going.
You mentioned taxation, GST. Is GST helping, or is it making things more complicated at this stage?
Currently, GST is making things more complicated because at Eventusaur, we deal with vendors or service providers ranging from pundits to caterers to decorators to your Shamiana fellows and venue owners. And on the other side, we have really tech-savvy consumers who come on our website, on our apps, and they play around and they book all these events. And we have to explain to a bunch of people who haven't been on the tax payroll, it's suddenly our responsibility to bring them on board and make sure that they kind of pay their taxes, we pay the taxes on their behalf, get them onboarded, some sort of help.
Complicated.
Yes.
GST?
Yes.
You're laughing. Is that a laugh in sorrow, or is that a laugh in anguish?
It's a laugh in everything, because GST was supposed to make things simple, but I don't think anything simple about GST. A lot of complications are there. I think they've defined for the product sector, but we can sell to companies which are in export zone. I don't know whether they can be taxed or not. We are delayed. Then there are issues in categorization. There are issues in reimbursement. So I don't think we are yet there. I think it's a great policy, but poorly implemented or poorly documented, and no support on clarification.
Ricky Jacob of Paysac. How old is your startup?
So we are a little less than 2.5 years old right now.
So still a baby, still a toddler. What are the issues that you have faced in terms of the challenges you faced? Was it funding? Was it the regulations? Was it dear old GST?
So I think, since everyone mentioned things like reimbursement and expense claims, interestingly, the product that we built and the solution that we're trying to provide is regarding tax saving for employees, managing expenses for companies.
You're noticing a need and you're meeting that.
Definitely. So, definitely it's a challenge that we have seen a lot of people face. So we're kind of simplifying all of that with regards to employee saving that little bit extra of their salary, which is, again, government approved modes, but then we're bringing in technology and simplicity into it. And some of the challenges there is, again, as a startup, we are managing people's money, and then there's a whole credibility and trust that needs to be built from a company to trust us into managing their money.
A large part of our business is around software exports, and we sell to people outside India. So one of the things, obviously, GST has brought in the law, which was fairly archaic, and service tax had taken it out, which was putting tax on export revenues. And it's just come back again, so that's hitting us fairly badly. The second thing, we face a lot of challenges. Startup selling internationally is expensive. So when you go into events and we go to forums outside India, taking up booths and participating is expensive. So how can, if the government or bodies like NASSCOM can help us in getting subsidies around these things, that would really help us.
Okay, we'll take a short break here. What we've been seeing so far is that funding has been a challenge for some of the startups. Rules and regulations, especially GST, does seem to be a big challenge. After break, we'll be taking a look at the state of the startup industry in India this summer.